time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go!
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod. I'm your host, Josh. If this is your first time joining us, that is my name. And we are chatting about The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 5 today with our good friend Kirk on the podcast. We're currently down for repairs still. Our escape pod is still not working quite right, but next week we will be back with our original sound. We also got The Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 15 and 16, the finale to chat about. 40 years of Return of the Jedi, as well as 5 years for Solo. So much to go over today. Let's step into the escape pod and chat about Star Wars.
Another happy landing.
Alrighty, welcome back, Kirk.
Hello, it's good to be back.
Good to be back. It'll be our last pit stop before the escape pod is repaired. In the meantime, we got the very unique and less superior sound going on the show. But it's always good to chat Star Wars, and week to week we just kind of make do, and we make it happen. Make the magic happen.
That's exactly right. It's not a perfect escape pod. It's gone through a couple of our ships have exploded over the year, which means it's got a few bit of wear and tear on there. But gotta make do.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like we need to get a recording of some sound effects playing in Galaxy's Edge, and like the lineup when you go into the Millennium Falcon ride. They have like just ship repair noises going on and stuff like that. I feel like we need like a track like that kind of playing in the background.
I agree. I'm gonna have to fly all the way from down under and get back up there and just specifically record those tracks just for over a weekend, and then fly back and be like, yep, I've got them.
Yeah, exactly. It's most welcome. Well, we have a packed schedule for today, because not only did we get to the halfway point of season 3 of Mandalorian, but we also got the final 2 episodes of The Bad Batch season 2, and they were actually good. They were actually good this week. I mean,
oh, great!
How crazy is that? I feel like we go week to week. I hate to bash on a Star Wars show, because I'm a Star Wars fan. I don't want to hate Star Wars stories, but sometimes a lemon just comes along, and you just gotta say something about it, get it out of the system so it doesn't build up.
I know. I was feeling the same. Like last week after the episode, I'm like, am I being too critical? Like, especially on the poor kid, like Vizsla's kid. I'm like, am I being too critical on this poor kid? But I'm glad it's not just me. And like, yeah, both episodes, and we'll get into it, are definitely not lemons. That's for sure.
I just gotta say this year, it's kind of crazy to think about, but this year is the 5th anniversary of Solo. Can you believe 5 years ago Solo came out, and we're actually approaching the month of May, which is when the movie first premiered. So we're about to hit the 5th anniversary of Solo. I can't believe it's already been 5 years, but
that's insane. I remember going to, that was, I think, apart from The Last Jedi, because I was overseas when The Force Awakens came out. So, and also for The Last Jedi, I wasn't able to see either of them on opening night. So I was really disappointed with that. But I saw Solo on an opening night, and it was the emptiest opening night for a Star Wars movie that I had seen. Not that I'd seen, I'd gone to other ones, but the only other one I went to was Rogue One. But it was so empty, and I still, I loved it. And I only just recently watched it, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I still think it's fantastic, and it's so annoying. Like reading up on some of the criticisms of why they think it didn't do too well, I guess. But I still think it's a great movie, and I love Rogue One as well. So a bit of a shame we didn't get some more of it, but I can't believe it's been 5 years already.
Yeah, I know. It's like I'm in the same boat as well. Like I went in not expecting much, and then I walked out kind of thinking to myself like that was better than I thought it would be. And I was quite surprised that it didn't do well financially. And I'm kind of blanking on what the critics thought of it. I remember it not being terribly rated. Like I remember people enjoying it. And the general consensus was, like this movie didn't need to happen, but it was better than people thought it was going to be. And then it left a lot of casual viewers very confused when Darth Maul shows up, and it's like, yeah, you gotta watch Clone Wars. But
yeah,
it was cool though. It was cool, and it made sense to have the character in there from a canonistic point of view, and it's made for some good stories in the meantime. I mean, over the last 5 years, there's been a lot of backfill story, which has resulted in kind of making that scene make more sense. I mean, we've had the completion of the Clone Wars finally in those 5 years, and Dryden Voss shows up in a hologram in that Clone Wars arc, the last 4 Clone Wars arc.
Yeah,
season
true.
7. Yeah, so there's been some connective tissue here and there, and I feel like we're gonna get more and more as time goes by. But
yeah, I remember when I went to go see the Solo premieres at midnight, and I went with my dad, who's like, he's watched the original 3, obviously, like, introduced me to Star Wars as well, and he also watched the prequels when they came out, but obviously he hasn't seen like all the Clone Wars and everything in between. So when we're watching it, and then Darth Maul pops up at the end of the movie, like when we were talking, he's like, didn't that guy get cut in half? Why is he back? Yeah. I'm like, well, let me tell you something. And I'm assuming that's what a lot of other people were like when they saw him. But because they also, when that scene came up, they played like the Jewel of Fate's song as well, didn't they? Like just a very small little bit, like kind of running in the background. Maybe I'm not remembering right, but I remember there was also another little kind of like Easter egg in there that was awesome.
Yeah, no, it was really well done. So and to have Sam Witwer return as well for the for the voice combined with Ray Park as the body again, like it was just so well executed and thought of very 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 well. So
looking back on it, I feel like they were going to do something else with Darth Maul on the big screen, at least, not in just the TV shows. Which is, I don't know. Did we miss out?
I don't know. I mean, like it's certainly possible. We may have missed out on something. There may have been bigger plans for that character. I know his. I mean, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen Star Wars Rebels. But his death in Rebels had been a piece of canon for quite some time at that point already, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But it was the kind of thing that's like, even though we've seen the end of a character's life story, it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't tell more chapters of that arc in stories that take place earlier on, right? And that's 100% kind of the idea behind the prequels as a whole, and even Rogue One or Andor or anything. It's like what's a good story that we can tell with this character, like even though people know what happens to them, there's still story there that we can kind of, and it's like, why not, right? Like, I mean, that's what they do. That's what the whole idea of making a movie really is executing a story on screen that people can kind of enjoy. And like, so what if you know how this character's fate turns out, right? Like, that's not got to be the 100% only reason why you're watching the movie in the first place. Like, so yeah,
exactly. And I think like the whole cast was like great. Like Alden, I can't remember pronounce his last name, but Enrique or something.
Yeah, Alden Enrique,
he was fantastic. Donald Glover was awesome. And I think even Woody Harrelson and Emilia Clarke were all fantastic and
amazing cast.
I know, and it's like it was so fast paced and everything. It was honestly like an Indiana Jones movie, but in Star Wars. Like it didn't kind of miss a beat. The only thing I thought was a little bit annoying, and rewatching it again recently, was when Solo got his name. When the guard like looks at him, he's just like, "You're by yourself, so it's gonna be Han Solo." Yeah. So apart from that, I think it's great. Again, probably not near my top favorite Star Wars movies, but it's definitely, I don't have anything to like disagree with it or not like it in the end. Although I do remember, and this is probably going off to on the Marvel side of things, but the kid villain at the end of the Solo movie is also one of the villains in, so she's not the villain technically, but she's the villain in one of the Marvel movies. I think it's like Captain America, like the new TV show,
Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
That's right. And it's a bit annoying when you see characters that look like, her hair is like so striking and you can recognize it from everywhere, so it kind of feels like the universes are almost kind of cross paths at least.
She was in Willow as well. She was in Willow.
True. So I mean, obviously you can't just not use actors and everything. It's not like Woody Harrelson in Solo is the same Woody Harrelson as you see in Cheers, for instance. But still, it's a great movie. Although, actually, now that I think about it, I remember at the end, like they were raising money, like just like they were in Andor for the rebellion. So I wonder where all this money's going. Again, more questions not answered because we didn't get anything else from it. But I think in the end, like they made the right decision on what they currently should be doing in terms of like movie release dates and all that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. Return of the Jedi also celebrates its 40th anniversary this year. 40 years ago, Return of the Jedi made its way into theaters and blew people away with the death of Darth Vader and the Emperor and second Death Star and just a whole other, like that trilogy coming to a close. I mean, I would love to hear stories of just anyone who was around to kind of see that final chapter come to theaters, and maybe that was anyone's first experience in the movie theater, seeing a Star Wars movie for the first time, or perhaps even seeing any of the Star Wars movies in the theater for the first time. Like it's a time in which I was not alive to witness, but 40 years. I mean, that's quite a long time. So it joins the ranks of Empire and A New Hope before. I remember they celebrated the 40th anniversary for A New Hope when I was at the celebration in 2017, and here we are, I guess, 5 years later. Well, is it 5 years? I guess, a couple of years later, and now we're at the 40th anniversary for Jedi. So everyone in London at Celebration in London is gonna have a chance to buy some 40th anniversary Return of the Jedi merch, some shirts and sweaters and patches or whatever, and those are gonna only be available this year. And I saw there's some cool action figures that they're releasing as well from Hasbro, which they have like the 40th like kind of badge on it and stuff. Like, man, it's what a time to be a collector.
I mean, when I was a kid, like obviously I didn't see it in the 80s because, well, I didn't exist back then. But Return of the Jedi was always my favorite Star Wars films because, like, when Luke first ignited his green lightsaber, I remember watching it when I was a kid. I was like, "What? That can exist?" And it's probably like, I think Empire or New Hope is probably my favorite now, but it's still it still holds a very, very special place in the whole story. I personally will say that I think I enjoyed the special edition version a bit more compared to the original. But I just can't imagine what it would have been like for audiences back then just to watch.
Oh yeah.
Not even Return of the Jedi, but I guess like a conclusion for the whole thing. But any of the Star Wars, it's just like I don't think you'll ever properly experience something like that again. Like actually witnessing those type of special effects and the story being taken place in a way you wouldn't be able to imagine. It's just unbelievable, and the fact that I can just pop in these movies like on Blu-ray or watch them on Disney Plus and they still hold up today, like 99% of the way, it's just phenomenal. And I think Return of the Jedi is like one of the best finales of really any trilogy out there.
Oh, totally, yeah. That being said, like, I mean, it's maybe I'm in a bit of a minority group here, but I actually like that one the best out of the original trilogy. And I don't know, it's a number of things, but it offers something that almost none of the other movies have really offered before, because it was the first movie that we got to see the Emperor in person, right? In A New Hope, he's just this elusive person, and in The Empire Strikes Back, we're talking pre-remastered. Like the original version of it wasn't Ian McDermott. It was somebody else. It was only the recent remasters, the Blu-rays, that finally kind of put Ian McDermott in the film retroactively. And so the sixth one was like Return of the Jedi. That was the staple, definitive Emperor Palpatine that we know and love today. The one that we see in the prequels, the one that we see in the Clone Wars, the one that we see in even the sequel trilogy now as well. And so that movie is definitive for kind of his first real solid appearance in the canon, as well as Luke's green lightsaber that we associate with him of kind of becoming this Jedi that he's kind of set out to be. I love the whole father-son relationship, the duel that happens, the in the Lego sets, they call it the final duel or the last duel or something, and the music that kind of plays, in synchronous, with that battle going on, and we got to see a lot more Lando action. You see Lando piloting the Falcon, which that was kind of cool to see. Han kind of not being in his normal place and seeing him kind of like out of his normal environment in a new way, leading ground troops, as a general, and we had the iconic slave Leia look. I mean, like that has set like I like within the geek nerdum circles, that is it alone just like a staple iconic thing. Like it's elevated Star Wars.
I think that like solely contributed to like millions of people's like puberty, like back in the days over the last few generations, like
early puberty.
Yeah, and it's just done so much. I don't know what on earth they were thinking, like to do it that way. But I guess they had something in mind. Maybe
JJ. I think when JJ wrote Episode 7, he probably took inspiration from the moment that he witnessed that, which is where he gets Kylo Ren's line, "There has been an awakening." Or so Snoke says it. Sorry, Snoke says it. But yeah.
That's right. And then obviously Ryan Johnson, like he wanted to balance the playing field and put Kylo Ren like topless in the second movie.
Yeah,
No, you're so right. There's so many iconic Star Wars things people think about Star Wars from episode 6 or episode 3, I guess, depending how you look at it. Yeah. And I just think like the final battle, and for some reason, every single time, and this is not the Yub Nub version, but like the special edition version, I'm always like, you're always kind of not brought to tears, but it always gets very emotional when you watch like the ending where they all come together and there's a celebration and stuff, because you really do feel like it's all come to the end and they've finally defeated the Empire. And that's why I think Andor is so good, because it makes the Empire look so much worse. And when they fall, it's even better. So, it's definitely a very special movie and a very special celebration towards the end when it all happens. And my two kind of notable things I just remembered was that I remember when like Luke's fighting Vader, like towards the end, there are so many subtle references to Luke choosing whether or not he's going to go to the dark side. Like I remember how the shadow kind of casts over his face as the Emperor, or I think it's maybe Vader, is kind of like antagonize him and kind of trying to poke a knife at him as well. Compared to like when Luke like looks at his hand after he starts striking down at Vader when he falls down to the ground. Like there's so many subtle things that make it so good and overlooked sometimes. And as a kid, you just don't notice these things.
It's a powerful story. Yeah. Like there's so many things, you're totally right. Cause like years later, here we are still talking about movies that we've seen 100 times. And it's like, there's always something so there's something grandiose about those George Lucas Star Wars movies that, they just never get old. Like there's always something to kind of go back and talk about and themes and storylines that kind of translate into just real world things people can relate upon, like today. I mean, like it's like that was a powerful message too. Like when he looks down, like what you're saying, he cuts off Vader's hand and realizes that he's this machine, and like you can almost like, it's not said in the movie, but you can almost like hear the echo of Obi-Wan's words. He's more machine than man in your head, like as you watch the scene. And it's like, wow, that's pretty cool stuff. But then also like, looking at his own hand going like, if I continue down this path, like this is what I'll become. And it kind of goes back to that vision that Luke has in the cave when he cuts off Vader's helmet and realizes it's his own face. And it's like that. This is where the dark side can lead, and this is what Palpatine wants. If I do this, if I kill my father, I will become what he wants me to be. I think it's the moment that he really kind of becomes a Jedi, is like when he gives that up. And
yeah, absolutely. I think it's not all a happy ending. Like most movies are especially heroic movies, including like episode like A New Hope, like it's a happy ending in the end. But like right at the end, the thing that again sticks out to me is how at Vader's funeral, it's just Luke. No, not even Leia's there. Like it's just him and the guy that is like being like at the funeral, like Anakin's being I guess you could say cremated. He's supposed to be the chosen one of the whole story. Like that's what the whole story is based around. And there he is at the end of his journey, at least for at the time it was, I guess, by himself, just with his son. And like they could have done a shot of like everyone kind of like holding hands and being like, he used to be a good guy. But yeah, like it's kind of honest in the end.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it is. It's a very honest feeling that you have when you watch that scene with Luke. Just kind of, he's not sad, he's not crying. He's just kind of like lost in the moment a little bit, just kind of staring into the flames. And it almost makes you think like what's going through his mind, like because the last moments were a moment of forgiveness. And and I love those last words that he has with Luke. It was so like well written, and a good redemption story is always a good one to watch. But like it's very different, I think, when you and I think that I kind of tend to I'm definitely, I give Rise of Skywalker a hard time, but I think my favorite part of that whole movie was definitely that moment that Kylo Ren comes to terms with himself and sees Han Solo in front of him, as if like, and it wasn't done from a Force Ghost point of view. It was all kind of in his head. But like, I love that scene so much. I love that like what played out in that moment. And it was just like it was just beautiful, like on screen story, and I think that was different enough and good for me to kind of like at least experience something that was really like wholesome in a movie that overall I just didn't like that much. But that moment sticks out as one of the best moments, I think, in the whole sequel trilogy.
Yeah, absolutely. You're referring to that scene from the Kylo Ren and Han Solo at the end, right? Like
yeah. And he says the
100%.
same line. He says the same line that he did in Episode 7, which he ended up going through with killing him, but he says it in a way now, and he says it differently. And it's now he's referring to, I don't know if I have the strength to go backwards.
It's so good. It's so good. I mean, yeah. I don't want to like again go into negativity, but like the Rise of Skywalker, I have many negative feelings about it, and not just because of the movie, but the whole situation. But that scene there, I remember thinking in the theater and like leaving leaving the movie. I'm like, why on earth is that scene in that movie? Because it's so good. And it almost just brings it up as well. And okay, this is a bit of, last night I just finished watching okay, this is spoilers for a completely unrelated franchise, but I had a free movie ticket. I went to go watch Dungeons and Dragons.
I saw that too.
With and everything, and this is spoilers for Dungeons and Dragons. I won't be explicit, but there is a death scene in the movie, right? And the characters look down and they're sad and everything, and they say they're really cheesy, like "I'm going to miss you so much" type of scenes. And death scenes are really hard to do. Like they're not easy, especially when you're acting them. But yeah, that scene in Return of the Jedi at the end, it's like. It's not cliche at all, and it's so good. Not even considering the rest of the Clone Wars and everything else that was added afterwards. Mm-hmm. Just that scene there was like, that's how you do a death scene.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe the worst death scene of all time is probably like the end of like The Dark Knight Rises. Like that one's not ideal, but
Right.
like it shows how hard it is to do a death scene, and I think that's a good testament to how good the writing is in the original trilogy in total.
Yeah, it is very good. It's not often that we get death scenes in Star Wars either. Like, I mean, you see a lot of people die, but you don't always get that very personal death scene, right? And the only one that kind of sticks out to me is the death of Qui-Gon. And that's a movie which you kind of meet this character and watch him die all in the same movie. But it's still it's still so good. And that's a death scene that to me it always hits hard, because like even to his last breath, like this guy's dying wish is for Obi-Wan to train the boy. And it's like, how can you think of someone else right now? Like, you are the most selfless human being possible, that you would, get stabbed and you're dying. You have like, 20 words left to say. And like, that's what you want. That's what your dying wish is, like, is to train this boy that, and it makes that moment so much more sad knowing what is about to happen. And I think that's why it hits so well, because like, that this boy is going to become this monster that's going to kill everybody and have this terrible moment with Obi-Wan as well. And more than one now that we have the Kenobi show as well. But yeah, I think what definitely contributes to a good death scene is a good story that comes before it. But in Star Wars, is sometimes the opposite. Sometimes a good death scene is also in relation to what is going to come after. And that's also really good storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because a lot of people say, Star Wars is for kids, and even George Lucas says that as well. And I do agree with that. I think these death scenes really are a good way to illustrate how a lot of people, I guess, deal with death, and as morbid as it is and everything. But they've just done so well, and it's because of the story too. Even in Return of the Jedi, the death scene of what's the creature called? The Rancor. The death scene of the Rancor. The Rancor is like, the Rancor's Zuki, but he's so upset. He's so sad. And like, he doesn't fall down and start wailing and everything. And they didn't even skip past the scene. He just is just so upset. Yeah. And I think that, like, how someone would react if their like pet passed away or something, and it's just great. I don't know why I'm praising Return of the Jedi for all the good things it is for its death scene.
It's good. Yeah, it's good. I think a bad Star Wars death scene is definitely the Jango Boba moment, where Boba, all he does is just kind of hold the helmet up to his face, and then you just cut away, and that's it. That for me is always.
The helmet was just, the head was going to pop out of the helmet and just like roll away.
Yeah, I think it's bad though, because like, even when it happens, like, Boba's just off to the side, kind of looking like, huh? Like what just happened? And I don't know. It's never really been that great, but
look, you know what? There are so many good other scenes, like death scenes throughout, and just regular non-death scenes as well throughout the whole Star Wars franchise. So I think we can give that one a pass for now.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. On a touch, while we wrap up this Return of the Jedi thing, a good death scene is like when you see the Ewok battle happen. All the Ewoks, they're like totally fine. Like, you don't see any Ewok bodies anywhere. It's just stormtrooper bodies. And then there's that one scene where like an ATST blows up a tree or something, and then there's an Ewok that goes like, and it's kind of like, and it's so sad, because like, you get an Ewok going up to it, going like poking the body, and he's like, and he's like, sits down, like, oh my gosh, like it's just it hits hard. I'm like, man, I don't even know who this Ewok is, but like, that sucks.
I know. You know what? When I watched that, I remember when I was a kid, and I went and got myself, not because of that, but like, I remember when I had myself a Build-A-Bear, and every time because I remember watching that scene, it always made me feel they had so much more like emotion, and like they had hearts and everything. And again, another great scene. The poor Ewoks. That's so good.
Oh man, love Ewoks. All right, May 4th is around the corner, and anyone with their heart set on watching the premiere of Young Jedi Adventures, the animated show for the younglings out there, the first episode or two will be out on May 4th. So we got that to look forward to. Can't believe May 4th, Star Wars Day, almost exactly a month away, and that's about all the news that we got as of this episode. So I guess we should probably get into Mando now. It's been 30 minutes.
Yeah, true. That's right.
Mandalorian, Season 3, Episode 4, Chapter 20. It's called The Pirate. Gorian Shard invades Navarro in retaliation for Vane's expulsion. The Grief Karga contacts Carson Teva. Carson Teva is the X-Wing pilot that we've known to be as, he's also known as Kim's Convenience, I believe. Suspecting that the attack is a prelude to a new rise of the Empire, Teva informs one of his superiors. But when Colonel Tuttle shows indifference, he tracks down the Mandalorian covert and asks Din Djarin for help. Din Djarin convinces the covert to come to Karga's aid despite their prior confrontations with him. Bo Katan assumes command of the attack force. And as Mandalorians overcome the pirates, Vane flees and Shard is killed. The Mandalorians are welcomed back by Karga and the people, and the covert moves to the town. Karga also gives them a whole plot of land, just kind of somewhere on Navarro, which is
free real estate.
Yeah, free prime real estate, right by the lava pits or something like that. It's like, all right, cool. The armourer meets with Bo Katan, acknowledging the Mythosaur's reappearance as an omen that Bo Katan is the one that can reunite all Mandalorians, and bids her to remove her helmet to symbolize this new position. On his way back to Adelphi, Teva encounters the wreckage of Moff Gideon's prison transport, which has gone missing during transit. He also finds a fragment of Beskar alloy kind of wedged in the ship somewhere, implying that Mandalorians could have been the ones to break Gideon out. So a lot actually happened in this episode, which is pretty cool. I'm also kind of skipping over the fact that we got a live action appearance of Zeb Orrelios, which
and he looks great.
He looks amazing. Yeah, he looks so good.
He's been juicing. He looks good. He looks like, in Rebels how he has like the yellow eyes with just like the hole in it. That's how it's kind of animated. I've always wondered how they were going to animate that. And I always thought that it was going to look really strange when they brought him to live action, but it was perfect. Absolutely perfect. I did have to search after the episode if that was him or if that was like just one of his species, but it was him, and it's so good.
I also saw that this was on a report somewhere, but Steve Bloom, the voice actor who does Zeb from Star Wars Rebels, did the motion capture for Zeb in the live action show. So he was there. He wasn't just doing the voice. He was the real Zeb was there on set. So that was pretty cool.
Which means someone else could be around the corner. I think that earlier reference with the whales in the in the speed, I think we could see something.
I think so. I think my hopes are high. But yeah, it's man, like I gotta say, I am so thankful that they decided not to go with prosthetics for Zeb, because I feel like we've had a conversation about this maybe in a previous podcast episode about animatronics and kind of when the right time is to use them. And I feel like Zeb is one of those characters that done right is fully CG. Like he's just putting a costume on Zeb, just it don't work. He's one of those things. I think one of those creatures that just benefits the best with a CG face. Like you were saying with the eyes, like it's just there's something more lifelike about him being how he was portrayed in this. And it was a very short appearance. Hopefully they haven't dug themselves a hole with that one, because it does take a lot of money and work to get that to happen for a couple scenes. But if it's only one episode, a couple scenes, no big deal. But if he's going to be a big part to play in a future episode of a season of some kind and any kind of show going forward, that could be a bit of a bit of a wrench in a budget for sure. But it's cool to see him back, and I never expected they would bring him back because in Rebels, to me, it felt like they kind of wrote him out of the story a little bit with the Lasats finding a new planet for their species, kind of beyond a lot of reach from other people. So I always thought like, okay, well, he's going to be leading the Lasats, wherever they're going. And to me, it just felt like a natural stopping point for his story. I never thought that he would rejoin the rebellion or rejoin, the New Republic Navy, so to speak, or anything like that, right? But it looks like he's operating a ship of his own now and working under someone like Captain Teva over here. So, it's kind of cool to see him back. I mean, even if that's all we got, I'm happy. It was cool.
Yeah, it was a really good cameo, and it wasn't overdone either. Is he the same species as Cal Kestis' Master Jarrah DePaul? Is he the same like alien? Yeah, he is. Must be right. Because I when I first saw that, I was like, oh, it's him, and then I realized, well, hang on a second, no, he's spoilers, he's unavailable at the moment. So yeah. But then because I remember you used to say that you look at like the captions inside the show, like when you watch it. I'm curious if it actually came up with Jeb or Zeb. Wait, Jeb.
That's a good question.
Jeb,
I actually didn't get around to rewatching it this time around with captions, but in the credits it does say Zeb. Steve Blum.
Zeb. Yeah, right. Okay. So I mean, it was very well confirmed afterwards, even if it didn't have that in the captions. Obviously, I was just curious if they kind of put it in there.
That's good. That's definitely a good question for sure. Yeah.
And it was interesting that Carson, I think that's the X-wing fighter pilot's name. He didn't go, "Oh, hey Zeb, how are you doing?" He just didn't even say his name. So it kind of fueled that speculation at the start.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was a cool reveal. So I love that part of the episode. We had the death of Gory and Shard. I thought there would be a lot more to this pirate story, but I guess it just goes to show you let anyone get away in the Star Wars galaxy, and it'll have repercussions. So make sure you shoot first, kind of thing. I think they even had a joke about that. They had a joke about that in the episode where I think Grief Karga says he shot first, but like in actual fact he didn't. But like they definitely gunned them down cold blood. But
it was I think that guy deserved to die. He was just like, no, let's keep firing and stay up there instead of retreating. So you know what? Despite knockoff Space Davy Jones having a very short appearance in the whole show, I'm glad that he got what he's deserved. Yeah, because he just rocked up to a really nice town and then decided to destroy it.
Yeah.
Good riddance.
Yeah, exactly. I think the one pirate got away still, right?
Oh, true. Yes, the one that was like, oh, Mando's above you. Oh, he's below you. I don't know where he is.
Somehow he's always the last to survive, and then he gets away. He's like the Sleemy Slimo. Or Slimy Slimo, sorry. But yeah, Bo Katan's helmet removal, that was interesting. I mean, now I think the weight that her story has on season 3, as well as maybe even a season 4. I like the fact that she's definitely more of a main character now, and there's kind of like there's definitely a mutual respect between her and Mando's creed. I love the fact that they're starting to kind of go back a little bit, and from the beginning of the show, I think a lot of people wondered, like, why are all these Mandalorians not removing their helmet? Because in Clone Wars, they always remove their helmet. In fact, there were so many of them that didn't even have a Mandalorian suit because they were just a regular person. And it's like, well, what's going on here? So they made it pretty apparent that like they were kind of a offshoot subsidiary of I guess the Death Watch or something, like, a group of people that lives by the old ways and does things the old ways. And so that was kind of nice to get that difference there, and that confirmation that they weren't quite the same. But at the same time, it's like, like how's this gonna work going forward? You know, like
Yeah, I'm so confused with what the armorer's intention was there with why she wanted to take off the helmet. Is it to prove that all the Mandalorians can be united despite what their creed is, or I don't know. I kind of am getting, and I think this is maybe the wrong look at it, but I'm kind of not trusting the armorer at this stage. I feel like she's learned that the mythosaur exists, and I don't know. She's not obviously working with Moff Gideon or anything like that. I think that's a bit too far of a stretch, and there's not many there's not much evidence to that. But I don't know. I'm a little bit suspicious about her, unless I'm just not reading it.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I know where you're coming from, because the first time that Bo Katan revealed to the armorer that she saw the mythosaur, she almost didn't really accept the fact that it was real. She kind of said like, "Oh yeah, a lot of people see things in the living waters," and like kind of left it at that. So I didn't think that conversation would be revisited. So to me, I kind of think to myself like, well, did she go off on her own and get proof to herself that there is a mythosaur down there, and then maybe now she kind of goes to Bo-Katan and says, you know, what she says in terms, because it just, there's something missing there, right? Because like when Bo-Katan first told her, she's like, oh yeah, it's just an illusion, you know, people kind of see things, but now she's approaching it as fact that if you saw a mythosaur, maybe it may, first of all, maybe it is real, but secondly, like I've kind of reevaluated what I think about your vision, and perhaps it means something more than I'm giving you credit. So to speak, you know what I mean? So maybe the armor has kind of come to that kind of conclusion herself, going like, well, if Bo-Katan is kind of the best of both worlds, you know, maybe, and she's had this vision of the mythosaur, and you know, maybe we have to trust that she knows the way back for our people, and you know, she does come from a royal bloodline, so you know, maybe it's not such a bad bet to assume that this person, you know, is somebody we can kind of trust our leadership with, and allow her to break what we consider as law in favor of a greater good, which is reuniting all Mandalorians and like all people with all the different beliefs, right? Because we're talking about a world of people that all have their own way of living life, and not every Mandalorian is going to be one of the followers of the way, as what we know it to be. So I like that, you know, I like that, because our own world is like that. Our own world is full of people with different beliefs, and it's like, you know, it doesn't mean we can't be friends. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
And I'm glad this is up now, because we're at the halfway point. And I remember last episode, I was really, is this episode 4 or episode 5? I think this is episode 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've still got 4 episodes left. And I remember last week's episode, not this one we're talking about right now, but I was really worried, saying, where on earth are they going to go? And I remember we were debating if Moff Gideon was going to return. And although we haven't got any definitive things just yet, I'm liking where the direction is going, because there's a lot of questions that I don't know the answers to, and a lot of don't know where everyone's coming from at the moment. I think this whole season right now is very much so not focused specifically on Mando and Grogu, which is both good and bad, I guess you could say. But I definitely feel it's building to something that I think there's kind of 2 stories here. It's building towards what is the Mandalorian creed and culture in general going to build to, and how they're going to unite Mandalore again. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one side of the thing, which obviously has Bo Katan in it, Mando in it, and the armourer and everything there. And on the other side, I also feel like Lucasfilm, or the story, is kind of trying to paint the dots of including the Bad Batch. Why and how did Palpatine return via cloning methods post the original trilogy? So the Bad Batch is hinting to it at the moment, and I think it's no mistake that they're running that season at the same time. They're all trying to figure out how cloning works, as well as Dr. Pershing and them trying to capture Grogu again through Moff Gideon. So I think everything is obviously connected that way. It's a very, very loose connection, but yeah, I think this is going to spawn off into some very, very interesting kind of stories and everything. And I really feel like season 3 is that kind of bridging gap between what comes next.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I'll also correct myself. It is in fact episode 5 of season 3. So we got 3 left.
Right.
I guess. Yeah.
Three left. Yeah, I thought it was episode 5. Look, three
Yeah,
left.
you're right.
I wish we did have an extra one. But you know what? I really hope we get moving on these episodes because we don't have many left, and we're gonna have to wait another 2 years or maybe a year and a bit.
Well, I think we're at the point now where we've run out of trailer footage to speculate on too. Like we burned through all the
true.
Yeah, when the trailer came out for season 3, all those TV spots, I think we've seen everything we've already kind of seen. So there's like 3 episodes now where we just have no idea like what we're going to see. So that's kind of exciting as well.
So they didn't show like the Mace Windu returning of saving everybody at the end of episode 8 of the season, right?
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah. But yeah, it's cool. I think I got to ask you though, because we're seeing a lot more of Carson Teva now, and obviously, I think it was a year or 2 ago that there was word of a show which we would have had on Disney Plus called Rangers of the New Republic. And since that announcement, the show has been shelved. And I don't know if it's officially been canceled still or if it's been shelved. I know the word shelved and canceled were both used at different points in time. But do you think that that we could see the return of that show, maybe a re-announcement of that show, maybe even at Star Wars Celebration that's coming back? Perhaps because it seems to me that a lot of this, like Carson Teva kind of, really kind of investigating and making his case to his superiors, like the Colonel Tuttle over there, saying like, hey, the Empire is coming back. Like if we don't do something about it in the Outer Rim, they will come back. They're gonna do something. They're gonna regroup somewhere and come in swinging again, and we're not going to see it coming because we don't have the manpower to cover those areas. So
I think these stories here are really trying to do what should have been done in the sequels, as in like explain how the First Order came to power. And I think there is absolutely room for, because there's also Rogue Squadron that was supposed to come out, as well as Rangers of the New Republic. So I think there is room for a non-wizard wielding kind of rebellion story that involves fighter pilots and everything. Because X-Wings and the rebellions, like Air Force, I guess you could call it, is a big part of how they fight against the Empire. In saying that, I think there could be something coming up. It's really interesting to see the internal kind of scuffles that Carson has with the higher authorities at the not the rebellion, but the New Republic. So yeah, it is fascinating. I think Carson's a really good character, and I would like to see a little bit more of him, as well as the involvement of the New Republic, I guess. But I think there are too many projects, long story short, there are too many projects that have been shelved for them not to be considered in the end, that are related to, fighter squadrons and everything.
Yeah, so, Rogue Squadron by Patty Jenkins as well.
Yeah. I look, as much as that project might be shelved or cancelled or however you want to call it, I still think they are very much so kind of considering a show like that or a movie like that to come out. Imagine Top Gun, but like fighter pilots in Star Wars.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
No, and I think you're right. Like I want to go back just a moment to what you said about the sequels, because not to be transfixed on that, but I've always thought that where the prequels really stood out is the spaciousness of how much, like, they gave those movies so much room to breathe within the continuity, right? So, you have like 10 years between the first and second movie. That's a lot of time. And then now you've got like 3 years between the second and third film. And there's 19 years between the third and the fourth. So like with all these gaps, like that's where you can make more good stories to like tell those underlying things that need to matter for the movies to kind of have more weight. And I don't want to say make sense, because the movie should stand on its own as a movie, but to almost have more juice to it. It's like that 7-season Clone Wars show really makes episode 3 stand out a lot more than the way it used to. And I feel like you're right. Like like episode 7 could have benefited a lot by being a story about young Ben in training with Luke, turning to the dark side. New Republic investigating whispers of the Empire returning from the outer regions, stuff like that, right? Princess Leia, now diplomat in the New Republic, struggling with the truth being revealed that her father was Darth Vader. Taking that from the Bloodline novel that was released. Cool stuff like that. They could have done a lot of awesome kind of like big scale story related stuff and not be transfixed on this repeat story of a rebellion versus an empire that just kind of came out of nowhere. So I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad that they're kind of. I'm happy that they're doing this. Like I'm thankful that we're exploring this story that needed to happen in these shows, because now these shows have given it more time to breathe. Like Mandalorian is now taking place over the course of a couple of years, as opposed to the first season, which was like 5 years after Return of the Jedi. This season is a couple of years later. Like we're kind of experiencing time go by slowly, week to week, as we watch these episodes. Time is going by. The Empire is returning. Thrawn is out there. Moff Gideon's escaped. There's this sense that it's not just an empty galaxy with no Empire in it. We're getting these shards of Imperial forces still out there, fighting for whoever Moff or warlord that they're under, who could be serving a greater villain out there somewhere. And like you say, with the Bad Batch exploring the whole cloning thing, at least we're getting some connective tissue to that. So it's coming together. It's coming together, and I appreciate all these stories for that purpose alone, among others. But yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
It raises the question, though. It's something that Liam Neeson said recently. I do disagree with Liam Neeson because, and I'll tell you what he said recently in just a bit. But like, I love watching Star Wars. Like, it's the one thing that I always come back to, no matter how amazing or bad it might be. But Liam Neeson said that he doesn't, even though he supported the Kenobi show, he says that Star Wars is kind of best left untouched and not to tell these micro stories because it encourages more mystery. And obviously from like Disney's perspective or any right-minded business's perspective, that doesn't work because like you want to keep making shows and doing stuff. And that's why I disagree with him, because not only that, but I love Star Wars and I want to see these stories. Yeah. But how minute do we go with these stories? Right. Like, do we go like Babu Frick, a Star Wars story? Like, how far do we go? And I still would like to see these stories play out, and I think there's a lot more to be said. But I think with these last remaining 3 episodes or 2 episodes of The Mandalorian, I think it's going to open up a whole world of stuff, and we get Ahsoka at the end of this year. Yeah. So there's plenty to look forward to, and I think there's plenty of unanswered questions that will begin to get answered and open up new questions, and I'm here for it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's a wrap on Mando. Let's do some Pablos and Poodoos, shall we? Or Pablo Points and Pablo Poodoos. I got to come up with a better name. I always say let's do some Pablo Poodoos, but I also intend to say Pablo Points and I always miss that section. So for those just tuning in to Star Wars Escape Pod, we have a very funny scale of how we rate Star Wars stuff. We have it's basically a scale of 7. 3 Pablo Poodoos is the worst of the worst. 3 Pablo Points is the best of the best. Anything in between that is good and then not so good, however you're rating it. If you give it a middle, like a 50% score, that is a Bendu, the one in the middle. And let's just as an example, if the best Star Wars movie out there happens to be Empire, that's a 3 Pablo Point. If the worst one out there is Last Jedi, that's a 3 Pablo Poodoo.
Now, those are not my scores. I'm just giving those as an example for how this score system works. But we do this now with all of these episodes that have been coming out over the last couple of weeks. And it's kind of fun to award poodoos when the time comes, like a Bad Batch episode that premiered only 3 weeks ago. So let's do it, Kirk. You let's kick it off. What do you think this one deserves?
Despite that being the third time you've explained it to me, I still don't get it, but I'm going to give it this episode a 2 Pablo points.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's pretty good. You know, I'm actually going to give it the same. I thought it was great. You know, I thought it had a lot to offer. We just went over all the cool things about the episode. So like, yeah, I'm going to give it a 2 Pablo point. I have a scale of well, even though it's a scale of 7, I guess, or 7. There's like a little thing that I kind of wrote up about like what makes a good episode. And everyone's got their own opinion of like what makes a good Star Wars episode, but I kind of jotted down like 5 bullet points for like, you know, what contributes to kind of my score at least. Out of the 5 points, it's does it contribute or give depth to Star Wars lore? Does it have a good character development? So does it add to a good larger story arc? Does it connect with the audience? And does it have a good moral to it? Because sometimes you get those episodes that have like a really good kind of deeper story that has a good moral to it, but it might not necessarily have good character development or connect to Star Wars lore, but it might have a good message, and that might contribute slightly to the score, right? So those are the kind of like the 5 things that I kind of wrote down, which weren't super conventional, like writing and directing and cinematography and stuff like that. So yeah, because that's all. That's all. Yeah, I
like that. And yeah, actually, you just mentioned cinematography then, because that's the one of the things I love the most. This episode was honestly spot on. There was very, very few scenes where I was like, oh, that is CGI right there. I think they're doing an amazing job. Those wide shots and those wide battles are absolutely fantastic. And I really have felt immersed in the whole Star Wars, the whole Star Wars world. So great job for whoever's working on this. And I think they're putting a lot of time, especially not so much the scene on Coruscant. I think some of them have kind of left down, but at least this episode was like fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know, and that's part of the reason why I leave those things out of the scale, because like, I mean, this one was a standout for sure. But they're always great. Like they always do such a good job. I mean, we I don't say it enough, but the sound department on these shows, David W. Collins and, you know, the team at Skywalker Sound, always such a phenomenal job. You know, it gives so much life to an otherwise empty environment that, you know, it's crazy how much work the sound guys do to make an episode like this feel alive, especially in scenes where it's completely animated, completely CG, seeing ships fly through the air. Nothing's filmed. You know, they don't film any of that. It's all just animated. There's no sound with it. You know, there's some dude standing out on a train platform with a microphone, wind blowing in his face, trying to get the sound bites, you know, which they have to modify hours later into a cool engine noise or something like that. Like these guys do so much to make these amazing visuals come out and just kind of feel like a real environment, a real place. So, you know, it's amazing that the cinematography, fantastic. You know, the lighting is amazing. Like, you know, we could go on forever about that kind of stuff. And every week on these shows, they do a really, really great job. Some of them are better than others, but they're always really good. You know what I mean? So it's great. I've never been able to complain about it. Like even Bad Batch, even Bad Batch, like that Pabu episode, it was terrible. Like the episode, it was slow. It was boring. Like I didn't like it. It was a filler, 100% filler, and not in a good way. But it looked great. You know, it's like it always looks amazing.
It all looks great. And you know what? I even remember reading a quote that Martin Scorsese said about that episode of The Bad Batch, and he said, "This is cinema." So, like, you know what? I think that's all just because of the cinematography there. So
there you go. All right, Bad Batch. Let's start off with season 2, episode 15, The Summit. In order to find out more about the Science Division's activities, the Bad Batch trails Dr. Hemlock to an imminent summit hosted by Tarkin on Eriadu. The gathering concerns establishing a network of total control over the galaxy, in which the ASD's secret research in the Kaminoans' cloning technology is supposedly playing a critical role. As they sneak into the base where the summit is held, the Bad Batch discovers that Saw Gerrera has infiltrated the compound to assassinate the assembled Imperial top-level officers. The intruders are discovered and the alarm is raised, but Gerrera sets off explosives which disrupt the base's railcar that the Bad Batch must use to escape, leaving them stranded. That was where the episode left off, and the following episode we'll talk about in just a moment was picks up the slack. But how did you like this kind of first entry to the arc?
Yeah, it was good. I'm really growing a lot closer to these characters, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but like how it all kind of wrapped up this arc, I'm glad that it wasn't so closed-ended, I guess. They really do kind of seem like a tight-knit family and everything, and even though as much as like young kids can be really annoying in TV shows, and I felt that at first, even we did with Ahsoka. Yeah. I really enjoyed it, and it kind of, I'm like, damn, this is the end of the season already. It wasn't even really a cliffhanger at all, but I feel like there's just so much I want to just sit down, and because I watched these last few episodes all back to back, because I think last week I didn't get the chance to watch get caught up, but they're just great just to watch all together, and kind of feel like you're going on an adventure with them all the time. But I really enjoyed how this arc came together, and again, it's supposed to be I guess Star Wars supposed to be like a kid's show, as they say, but there are some very non-kid stuff suggested here. Yeah, obviously it's not like graphically violent in any way, which I mean, I personally don't even really want to see that. I like this more subtleties, but some really good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I did love the fact that we got Tarkin in this episode on Eriadu, which is
so true.
That was really cool. Eriadu is Tarkin's home planet. That's where he's from, I believe.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Tarkin's family is quite a important family on Eriadu. They're very influential, wealthy, powerful people. So like that was kind of cool to see him host this meeting on his own turf. I don't know if that facility was necessarily his personally, but it's interesting being such a high-ranking Imperial officer to kind of see how the Empire has developed on a world like his. And he would have had a lot to do with kind of the infrastructure there. So, the train, the rail cars, the summit, being the base on top of a mountaintop, like very above the clouds and everything, like very almost reminded me of a very luxurious style. Imperial like bases and stuff tend to be very clunky looking, very I don't want to, like, maybe like Soviet style, like concrete and big and like kind of daunting looking, and this one actually had a bit of a architectural kind of style to it, like a bit of like something to kind of look at and admire. And I thought that was kind of a nice little tip of the hat to maybe Tarkin's influence over that project. And
for sure, I feel like Tarkin's influence goes beyond what Vader's influence is in the end. Especially like there was, I think there was some episodes in the Clone Wars where the Emperor really had to test what Tarkin's where his loyalty lied, and obviously it wasn't with the Jedi at times too. Yeah. It was definitely something that I noticed that this area definitely looks a lot more developed compared to other other planets that we've seen. And I guess if it's his homeworld, that'd make a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure. I do love the fact Krennic also made an appearance in this show.
So true. I forgot about that. Yes.
Director Krennic, and Tarkin asks for a report on Project Stardust, which, as we know, is the Death Star project, and which won't be finished for another 18, 17 years from then on. But
Krennic is my favorite, new evil character that's been introduced in. I don't know why. Maybe because he's Australian, I guess. Maybe not. But he's Ben Mendelsohn plays such an awesome character, and I love his outfit, like the white cloak that he wears as well. It's quite unique. But yeah, his character is fantastic, and I was like, oh wow, I didn't expect that. And the Project Stardust as well. Hearing it back then, it's so fascinating to be like It almost felt like to me that I was listening in or eavesdropping on a meeting, and I know all the answers to the meeting. Yeah, and you just know that Project Stardust was a bit of a failure in the end. Yeah, not for any particular reason, but yeah, good to see Krennic back, and I hope we see more of him. Surely we'll see him in Andor. He has to come back in Andor.
It's pretty surreal. Yeah, and I totally agree. I think that would be a great opportunity to bring it back. It's one of those things, like if you think back to the flashbacks of Jin and hiding on her planet when Saw Gerrera goes to save Jin, and when Krennic shows up to take Galen Erso away for his research. It's really, if for anyone who hadn't read Rogue One, Catalyst, a Rogue One novel, that fills in a lot of gaps. But it makes me wonder because, the more that we get characters like Saw Gerrera and Krennic showing up in a show like The Bad Batch, the more I start to think maybe we'll get some crossover with stories out of novels like Catalyst or flashback moments like in Rogue One. And how far away is that flashback scene, right? Like from where The Bad Batch takes place. We know that he showed up with Death Troopers. So I don't know when the first time maybe we'll see a Death Trooper in Bad Batch is, but whenever that is, maybe that's when he goes to. I think they got to rough up Saw Gerrera a bit more before they pull a crossover like that. But yeah, it's cool to see. It's cool to see stuff like that. Also, continuing the story of Saw Gerrera as well. It's another character that's kind of interwoven through all these different Star Wars stories, and to have him show up in Andor and Bad Batch simultaneously. Kind of closing in his story a bit more. It's great. I love stuff like that.
Yeah, it's good. And how do they do it? Does Lucasfilm has a big board at their thing being like, this is all the characters that are doing this at this time? Because if I was writing the story, I don't even think I would have thought about bringing these characters that are big characters, but yeah, it's a lot of creativity involved, and it's a lot, very much so easier said than done when it comes to putting them into a story that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Story group, I think, plays a big part in keeping continuity in the spotlight sort of thing. But it's one of those things, I guess, if they have room to do something with a character that no story's been told in this area yet, let's do it, right? If it doesn't break canon too hard, but it's not like we haven't seen that before, especially with Dave Filoni. He's done it a few times now where he's gone back and rewritten over a story that's been done in a novel or a comic book and played it up a little differently than how we've read about it before, but still kind of on the rails in a bit. So it's I don't know if it quite qualifies as breaking canon, but in the minute details, yeah, it does. It is a hard thing to kind of keep consistent forever, but they're doing the best they can. And,
storytellers. The more stories you do, the more likely there'll be an error, I guess. But you know what? Yeah. As long as I don't talk to you, then I won't find out about it because you're the one that usually picks up on them because they're so small. But you are absolutely right. It's good to see all these characters coming back, but understandable. If they choose not to in the end, because it can mess with the timeline, the sacred timeline.
The sacred timeline. Yeah. All right, the Bad Batch. Oh wait, no, actually, let's give this one some Pablos and Poodoos first before we move to the last episode. What do you think this guy deserves?
I'm going to give this one a 2 Poodo. Oh, not 2 Poodo. Sorry, 2 Pablo. Already, I went the wrong end of the scale. 2 Pablo points as well. Good episode. But obviously, like these last episodes would not be nearly as good if it didn't come for some of the good stuff that came before it. Obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's tough to rank this one because, of course, it kind of relies on the follow-up episode being the conclusion. So I'll also kind of award it 2 Pablo points. I think it was more than good for sure in more ways than one. It was maybe it was the fact that the last couple of weeks have not been too overwhelming. Perhaps that's why it stands out. But yeah, I thought it was great. I had very strong theater, like cinematic vibes through all the shots, especially when they have to board the rail train. I thought that was all super well done. Like the camera angles and everything like that. I mean, that's a challenging thing to do in an environment where they're only working with digital cameras in a 3D scene like that. Like you put any of these Star Wars animated shows, even that episode that we watched, Pabu, you put any of these episodes up against any other cartoon on TV anywhere, and they don't even compare to like how well these shows are done. Yeah. So
yeah, and they all look like illustrations, but they're just done in such a unique way. We could make like a whole podcast like series just praising what they do here.
Oh yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'll do 2 Pablo points as well. Yeah. Batch Season 2, Episode 16, Plan 99. With their railcar imperiled by Imperial attack, Tech sacrifices his life to enable his team's escape. Retreating to Ord Mantell to treat their injuries and come to terms with their loss, the Bad Batch is betrayed by Sid to Hemlock, who captures Hunter and Wrecker, forcing Omega to come out into the open. Echo and AZ-1 can rescue their comrades, but Omega is captured and brought to Mount Tantus, where she encounters Nala Se and Crosshair. Emery Carr reveals herself to Omega as another clone. We find out Plan 99 is also a kind of code for sacrificing oneself for the greater good of the team. And this also pays tribute to the team's squad number, which is Clone Force 99. So I love that. I love that this episode not only called Plan 99, but this goes back a ways because I think Clone was it one of the Clone Wars episodes had a defect clone, and his number was 99, and he was a janitor at the Kaminoan facility on Kamino in Topoka City, and he died in the invasion of Kamino back in season 3 of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I feel like it was. And I thought Clone Force 99 calling himself Clone Force 99 was like a good homage, good tribute to that character. Having themselves a plan that basically puts the team before themselves and calling that Plan 99 was also very well done, because that's exactly what Clone 99 does in the first place. He puts his brothers before himself and dies in the field of battle trying to get more ammunition for them, as they're kind of being pressed on, being fired upon in a bit of a tight area. But I thought that was really cool. I thought that was really nice. It paid tribute very well, and I really hope, and I say this with all the most respect for the story and the character, but I really hope they don't bring Tech back. Like I hope that it was a genuine death, a genuine sacrifice. It's almost like if they made a sequel to, or maybe they make a movie down the road and all of a sudden it turns out that Cassian Andor and Jyn survived in Rogue One. It's like that just wouldn't quite feel the same. True. And it's the same. True. It's the same problem with episode 9, right? Like with the Emperor back, it's like, well, on the one hand, that could be looked at as cool, but on the other hand, now episode 6 doesn't quite have the same gravity anymore.
Because I feel like Andor makes episode 4, 5, and 6 so good, as I've said many times in the past for the reasons for it. But yeah, if they bring Tech back, even though Tech is not as huge character as Palpatine, obviously, and some of the other characters, but yeah, I really don't hope they bring him back. I'm saying this a little bit negatively because I think they're going to, just because we haven't seen the body and they didn't do a funeral and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they just brought his glasses back because that's all they could find. So yeah, that's I'm already saying it with regret because I feel like they're going to bring him back anyway, which is so annoying and also so morbid because why would you want that? But yeah, you want these characters to have a lasting kind of impact on the show, and towards the end of the episode, you really do feel that these characters are defeated and just almost given up and broken because, you know, they've lost a teammate. Crosshair has obviously tried to reach out to them, but they failed this episode. Like, they failed big time. Nothing worked if you think about it in the end. The only thing that kind of worked was that Omega finally got a few shots with her crossbow on target, which is good. But yeah, everything kind of went wrong, and the episode didn't really end on a cliffhanger. I guess it does, and we want to see what comes next, but it's not like,
I guess Omega's been taken, and that's kind of the cliffhanger-ish, right?
It's just like, that's it. It kind of feels like a midway cliffhanger. So,
it does. It definitely feels like this could have been a 3-part story, with the third being they rescue Omega, but it seems like they've definitely left that for a season 3. And, we all saw it coming. Like, there's going to be season 3, 4, 5, whatever. I mean, they're going to go with this. They're going to keep going with this show until it's been run dry. But I hope they don't take it too long. I hope, because I think, we were saying this earlier, is like, there was more fluff in this season than I feel like there was in the first season. And
we need more seasons, but 8 episodes a season with really good stories. I don't want to see going back to, is it Pabu? No, not Pabu. I can't remember.
Pabu, Pabu.
I don't want to see that. I don't want to see them, like, there was actually like a meme or something where it's just like, oh no, Omega's lost, and then like she says a bunch of things in like her New Zealand accent, and then we'll go save her now because she was curious. I don't want any more of that. There's so much Star Wars content out there now that I want, 8 episodes a season, really good episodes, and some good progression throughout, which in the end we did obviously get there, but it didn't have to take 16 episodes. And obviously this like show is for kids and stuff compared to Andor, which is more adult orientated. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we don't need this many episodes.
No, we really don't. I agree. I think the season could be shorter, or at the expense of not having fluff episodes. And even if they have to have moments like that, it's like, did we really need a whole episode where they save a town from a tsunami? Like, we know that they're doing good stuff out there, but like, how is this essential to the overall character arc? How is this essential to the overall season story? It's not. Like, it's just fluff. And there's nothing wrong with a fluff episode so long as it can pay off later. And I don't think we'll ever see any benefit to having an episode like that.
Yeah, 100%. And like, for example, the biggest fluff Mandalorian episode that people have commented on in season 2 was that episode 2 where his ship gets frozen in ice and he's trying to transport the frog lady. But in the end, like that served a purpose. Like he traveled to another planet, and the story continued from there. So it technically was filler, but it was still it still contributed to the story.
Yeah, and it was a hiccup on a larger quest, right? Like, it's like the problems, the roadblocks that happen in a mission, which that those kind of things come up, right? Like on a quest, it's not just boom, 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 it all went well. So like, looking at the greater story, it played a part, it played a chapter, and it's also the first episode that he really comes face to face with a character like Tiva and Dave Filoni's X-Wing pilot's character as well. I forget the name of his character, but that was the episode that they met, and they got him out of there. They helped him out with the ship and stuff. So like, I
believe his name was.
Well done.
I don't know what his name was, but I mean, not even from like us as a watcher perspective or a viewer perspective, from like the people that are working so hard making these episodes, I feel like it's better if they concentrate their efforts on, doing less but better quality. And if it is going to be a filler episode, at least like have it not save people from a tsunami, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and like if they have to take a week off where it's like, let's do a different story that's filler or whatever, maybe not make it filler, maybe make it about some complete different group of characters. And, because some of the best Clone Wars episodes don't have Ahsoka, Anakin, and Obi-Wan in them, right? Like, there's some really standout episodes which have like, maybe they're like focused on a set of bounty hunters, or maybe they're focused on like Ventress, or like, like other things going on other than just the main group of characters in the show. And Bad Batch is taking place during such an interesting time. Like I would be okay watching an episode of Saw Gerrera doing what he does, like seeing what he's up to completely from start to finish, right? Like, and we've had episodes with Crosshair in it completely. Those have been some of the best episodes in the series. So like I strongly feel like these filler episodes that they do could be better served with different character arcs altogether. Like let's
Absolutely.
get a full like what's Rex doing? Like we saw Rex and Echo go off on their own. I thought for sure we'd get an episode with them, as an episode, right? And
this
episode.
Yeah, this episode, they're just like, oh, Rex is unavailable. And when I hear that, I'm just like, that's just an excuse. Like,
yeah, it's
they could have brought him back. And in the end, it's not the 80s and the 90s anymore. We don't get one Star Wars thing every 3 years. So we don't want it as much as possible from like the one piece of content. We get it. We're getting so much now, which we're obviously very grateful for. So that means that we don't need 30,000 episodes where half the episodes they're fishing and stuff. It's good to get some good quality stuff, especially if we're getting so much of it from different TV shows.
Yeah.
But in the end, there are a lot of people out there that obviously do love watching every part of it, no matter what it is, and that's really good. I just I don't got time sometimes.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
I gotta watch Dungeons and Dragons instead.
yeah. No, but you're right. There's probably someone out there who Pabu was like their favorite episode, and in that case, I feel kind of bad that we're crapping all over it. But George Lucas's favorite Clone Wars arc is the arc where the droids are in nowhere, like they're in that white desolate planet of a desert, and they meet Gregor, the Republic Commando. That story arc, but the episode specifically where there's just the droids going from mirage to mirage, finding their way around. Yeah, they come across that skeleton of Jackson. Like that's his favorite episode. I was like, dang, like that is probably one of my least favorite episodes of the series. And there's no disrespect for George, but like it was just really, really boring. It was super slow. And maybe it's just my idea of what makes a good story, like faster paced and a bit more interesting. But he loves those droids so much. And I think for him, it brings him back to his first movie. His standing out in the dune sea of Tatooine in Tunisia, filming Anthony Daniels in the scorching hot sun with this robot R2-D2 that probably didn't stand up very well on the sand, and trying to figure out what he was doing in the middle of nowhere. And I think for him, it's reflective, right? To watch a story like that on screen with characters who, to him, are quite relatable in a moment like that. So for us, it might be boring, but for someone like him, it's the best thing in the show. So maybe, call me crazy, but maybe there's a few people out there that Pabu is like the best of the best. Maybe for them, it's three Pablo points, and maybe it brings them back to a maybe perhaps a personal moment. Maybe they've even experienced a tsunami. Maybe that's kind of, maybe that plays a part, that totally makes sense. But I like, coming from the standpoint of like, this story is taking place for a purpose within the Star Wars lore and continuity. to me, it just didn't really quite feel like it fit in very well with the rest of the season. But
in the end, like these last 2 episodes were absolutely fantastic. I think they if they stick with the decisions that they chose in terms of, you know, eliminating some characters and how those stories came to be, that's good. And I thought that scene right at the end with oh my goodness, I'm forgetting everybody's names now, with Hunter and Wrecker and I can't remember the scientist's name, where they storm the bar, and the bartender, I've forgotten her name, but she gives them in. Sid, yeah. Oh, thank goodness! Like, thank goodness they actually showed her being, being bad. That needed to happen, and that was really good that happened, and it was done quite well.
Yeah, it also makes that episode earlier on in the season that we were like, I actually kind of liked it. It was a bit of fluff episode, but it was that episode where Tech wins that death race for Sid's freedom, from her what do you call it when her debtors, the person that she owed money to.
That's right.
Yeah, and so like it was kind of made relevance, I guess, to what that guy gives them the warning for, which is like, hey, don't turn your back on Sid, because you're going to regret it. And so like that was a big payoff, and it made that episode better because of the moment that you mentioned. So there was a lot of stuff to like in these last 2 episodes, and it gives me hope for season 3. Maybe we're going to get a little bit more substance in a season like that. Now that we've kind of come to terms with the fact that this Mount Tantus plotline is not anywhere close to the end. We've only seen the beginning of the TK units and this whole laboratory thing, whatever is going on there. And Omega's got a sister, like that's kind of crazy. So she's not the only female clone out there. There's something big going on. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of what that is, and maybe season 3 could be the conclusion to all of this. So.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. And I guess the one thing I didn't mention was, again, the whole season exploring the clone rights as well. Because I guess it's something that never was. Most people think all stormtroopers are just clones. So it's good to know that it was good to see all that play out too.
Yeah, it's good to differentiate those 2 groups for sure. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, that pretty much wraps up everything. Pablo points of Pudus. I'm going to give this second part 2.5 Pablo points. I think the death of Tech, so long as it stays that way, I will keep my score. I like Tech a lot, and it means a lot when they get rid of a character that people love, because it does make a moment like that a good worthy moment on screen. If they bring it back, it'll only mean it'll just be, I'll just give that rant if it ever happens.
Yeah, fair enough. Look, I personally think that they will, as much as I don't want them to, just given all Star Wars stuff. Didn't show the body, didn't have a funeral, all that juicy stuff. So I think I'm going to keep my Pablo points at 2 as well, because I feel like both the last episode for me and this one were pretty much like a singular movie, I guess, like a good long episode.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'll give both of them a 2. Not that I think they're both kind of interconnected. It was just like poetry. They all rhyme. As they say.
Yeah, for sure. All right, buddy. Well, thanks so much for coming back on the podcast again, and coming aboard the Escape Pod, our currently salvaged piece of hunk of junk that we're flying around in these days. We'll be back up and running next week, and off at light speed off to another place. So yeah, thanks again for coming back on.
Thank you for having me. I am looking forward to getting back into some more comfortable seats in our new Escape Pod soon.
We'll have a Dajark table and everything.
All right, thank you all for tuning in to the show, and we highly recommend that you come back for Star Wars Celebration weekend, because we're going to be doing daily coverages
I assume, on all those things. I know Blake suggested an open mic, kind of a live chat going on in the Discord. So, we'll have all our Escape Pod related stuff prepared by then. And we're going to be back in action using the original sound that you're used to hearing. Our Escape Pod's been down for repairs for the last 2 weeks, but we'll be back. We will be back. And, we have continuously put out more episodes despite the tech issues and undergoing repairs. All right, so other than that, we have a few episodes of Mandalorian. Of course, the Bad Batch after show has come to a close until we get a third season. And of course, with Mandalorian, we only have about 3 episodes left. And then we can get back to all the other Star Wars stuff that we chat about during the year. Character, arc, what happened episodes, book reviews. We're going to be talking about Jedi Survivor. And I know we have a High Republic novel called The Fallen Star, which we need to talk about as well. So that we're going to be getting into that. And so many more things to look forward to. So make sure you subscribe to Star Wars Escape Pod, hit that like button, and make sure you share the show with a friend, because that always helps us out a lot. May the Force be with you guys. Big thank you again to Kirk for coming on, and every participant of Star Wars Escape Pod. We'll see you in the next episode. May the Force be with you.